When I was a university student, all I wanted to do was have fun. I could never get enough. That's when all this happened. Myself and 2 friends decided to go visit a ghost spot for a test of courage. This abandoned house wasn't too far from our university. Getting in used to be easy, but so many university students visited the place for tests of courage that it was now surrounded by a fence and forbidden to enter. But my supernatural-loving friend B-senpai had obtained some certain information. That house was going to be knocked down soon, and so the fence was gone and we'd be able to get in. He heard this from a friend in construction and told us proudly because few others had heard yet. Then he invited me to join him for a test of courage there. I agreed with 2 words. I was also interested in those sorts of places. In addition to B-senpai, my classmate A-senpai was also coming along. I hadn't spoken much to A-senpai, but I heard she could see ghosts and apparently B-senpai had forced her to come along. When we arrived at this creepy ghost spot on the day, feeling restless, A-senpai spoke to us in a serious tone. Even if there's something inside this abandoned house that shouldn't be there, I'm not going to say anything. I'll give you a sign instead. By something that shouldn't be there, she meant ghosts, and then she continued. When it came to ghosts, the most important thing was that they needed someone to notice them. If we did, then they could harm us. And if we noticed them, then they could possess us. So, that was why we had to be smart and pretend not to see them. We couldn't do anything foolish like saying, "There's a ghost here." And that was why, if she did see a ghost, she wouldn't tell us. A-senpai promised that if she sensed something dangerous, then she would get us out of there, and the 3 of us stepped inside. Inside was quiet, and, of course, we couldn't sense anyone else there. But how can I put it? I certainly sensed something strange about the place, whether it was a presence, the atmosphere, or just my imagination itself. But it was just for a second, and I took the lead without hesitation, the other 2 following behind me. A short while after entering, something tugged on the back of my shirt. I turned around and A and B-senpai were talking. They weren't looking at me, so thinking I must have imagined it, I turned back to the front. But then something pulled on my shirt again. Confused, I turned back again, and although I couldn't see too well in the darkness, A-senpai's face seemed tense. That was when I finally realized. A-senpai had said it. If she saw a ghost, she wouldn't say anything, but she would give a sign. It was important not to let the ghost know that we'd noticed them. Something tugged on my shirt again. A-senpai was definitely seeing something. Something she wouldn't say out loud. Maybe she was impatient waiting for me to say something, so A-senpai suddenly said, "I think it's time for us to go." She tried to sound calm, but her nerves still came through. "Why? We just got here," B-senpai complained, even though he said he'd go along with whatever A-senpai said. Something tugged even harder on my shirt, over and over. I was terrified. What on earth was A-senpai seeing? But I couldn't say anything. We couldn't let the ghosts know that we knew they were there. That was why A-senpai was silently giving me a sign. Keeping my voice as calm as possible, I said, "Let's go. Doesn't look like there's anything here," and convinced B-senpai to leave as well. Outnumbered, B-senpai looked annoyed, but he reluctantly followed us. I was covered in sweat when we stepped outside. It was like something large and heavy was finally off my back, and an indescribable exhaustion washed over me. It wasn't like I could see or sense ghosts, so it was odd. B-senpai was as energetic as ever. A-senpai also sat down on a nearby rock, exhausted. "I had no idea it would be that strong," she muttered. "What did you see?" I asked straight away. I felt like I'd be better off knowing than not knowing in this case. Her expression conflicted. A-senpai just shook her head. "I don't know. There was something nearby, but where and what, I don't know." "So then, why did you tug my shirt?" At that, A-senpai looked at me, confused. "Your shirt? What are you talking about?" The way my face turned pale at that very moment was no joke. I checked again several times with A-senpai, and it wasn't her that pulled on my shirt. I reminded her that she said she would give us a sign. A-senpai completely denied that it was her. She hadn't even grazed my shirt, let alone pulled on it. She had no memories of pulling on my shirt over and over. She didn't have a chance to give us a sign, so that was why she suggested we leave so strongly. A-senpai didn't appear to be lying, nor making fun of me. Then she went pale too, and upon hearing that something was tugging on my shirt, it all made sense as to why she sensed something nearby. I didn't want to think about it anymore. But once it was in my head, I couldn't get it out. A-senpai and I stood close together. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that we were stuck to each other. That was why I thought it was her. But if it wasn't, then who pulled my shirt? Did that mean someone else was in there too? In that tight space? And when A-senpai suggested we should leave, the pulling on my shirt got even more frantic, as though trying to stop me from going. I couldn't stop myself from trembling in fear. If I'd asked her, without thinking why, whether she was pulling on my shirt, well, what would have happened then? If she shook her head and I strained to see who it was, then A short while later, that abandoned house was knocked down. But recently, I've been thinking. The person who pulled on my shirt, I think it was a kid. I didn't notice at the time due to the strange atmosphere inside, but my shirt was being pulled down. It was something only someone much shorter than me could do. Like a small child pulling on their mother's clothes. What does it mean? With that place gone now, I no longer have any way of finding out.